Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Gambit number 2, cover dated January 1994. So this is issue 2 of a 4-issue limited series focused on Gambit, the Cajun X-Man. And on this cover we have an image of a distressed Gambit cradling the body of his, well, presumed to be dead, but as it turns out not in this issue, wife, Belladonna Baudreau. And we have the trope of the playing cards with various key characters represented on these cards, including the Tithe Collector here, the King of Diamonds, and we have Julian here of the Thieves Guild, Ace of Spades, of course. So something else I want to note before moving to the inside story is this view of Gambit without his trademark trench coat. So this, as I recall, is the first time that I've seen him represented without the trench coat. And I like the detailing here in Lee Week's drawing of the stripes on his forearm here, matching the stripes on the side of his ties. So that's nice. I'd never seen that before. And also gives you a sense that what he's wearing on his torso is a type of body armor. It becomes more clear when the trench coat is off. Okay, so let's open this one up to the inside story. The cover, by the way, of course, by Lee Weeks. So penciled and inked by Lee Weeks, and it's a pretty striking cover, very effective. And here we have the opening page of the story, establishing shot of this mansion on the outskirts of the city of New Orleans on the River Road within sight of the Mississippi. And it's a place that Gambit's familiar with as he leaps over the iron railing fence here and makes his way towards the house itself. So he picks the lock with his Ace of Spades, always the Ace of Spades with Gambit, and he makes his way up the staircase, narrating to himself, "Too quiet like a funeral parlor. The house was always full of wild goings on when she was alive, drew me to her like a candle to a flame, people always warning me that I'd be the one to get burnt. Belle." So he's talking about his wife, presumed dead at the end of the X-Men Ghost Rider Brugge saga crossover, but as it turns out, not. That's what his brother, his foster brother, Henri, told him in the previous issue, the first issue of the limited series, before he was killed by the Thieves Guild at the X-Mansion. So, great art on this page here. Great combination of the pencils. The page layout is interesting. The establishing shot of the house. And I think at this point in the limited series, Lee Weeks has become very comfortable drawing Gambit. So he does some great work on the character, and well complemented by the Klaus Janson inks and the Steve Buccellato colors, which are really vibrant and rich and nuanced as well. So here he is making his way into what turns out to be a bedroom, and he discovers that it's true. "You're alive, Cherie," he says as he takes off his coat. "You are alive, Belladonna." So that is his wife, as I was talking about earlier. And he says here, "My love, my wife, my love," he says. And, you know, clearly surprised, clearly distressed, but also presumably happy in some respect. And the title of the story is Honor Amongst Thieves. Story art by Howard Mackie, the writer, Lee Weeks, penciler, Klaus Janson, inks, colorist Steve Buccellato, letterer Richard Starkings. Okay, so let's see what happens next. Well, he's interrupted by the arrival of the assassins. So he uses his charged cards to strike at them and keep them back, but they threaten him. They call him an intruder, and he's the one who's going to die. But well, first of all, we get a little action sequence with Gambit here. This great anchor image of him leaping into action, kicking this guy in the jaw. And yeah, great little fight sequence here, and Lee Week showing off his command of fight choreography in the layouts and pencils. Just one little criticism I have: I'm a big fan of Lee Weeks' work then and now, but just one thing that I used to notice about him sometimes was his command of anatomy is so good that when you get a shot like this with Gambit kicking out his leg here, he isn't foreshortening it in such a way as to enlarge the calf and sole of the foot like a Jack Kirby would do, or even a Jim Lee would do. And so it seems like Gambit's leg, which is in perfect human proportion, it looks shorter than heroic proportions. So it looks a little off in an action comic. But again, the reason for that is because Lee Weeks actually knows what he's doing, but he needs to take a look again at something like Jim Lee doing a shot like this and just enlarge the proportions as the foot comes towards our point of view. That's my small criticism there. Otherwise, an excellent page. And then we have the arrival of Marius, who is Julian and Belladonna's father, and he demands an honor duel with Gambit. He says, "I will have the pleasure of taking your life in a duel of honor, sir. Pick up the sword, LeBeau." And Gambit says, "Look, I didn't come here to duel with you." And then his father-in-law says, "Then you should not have come at all, son-in-law. No more words. Pick up the sword if you have any honor." So he strikes at him with the sword, and Gambit does indeed pick the sword up. "All right, we fight then," he says. And let's see what happens. So they do indeed fight. And when I was looking at this page in preparation for the review video, I thought to myself, I see some Alex Toth influence here. Alex Toth's Zorro stories. I see a dash of it in the drawing and in the fight choreography on this page. Really nicely done, excellent work. Basically, the fight is ended by Gambit, who takes a medallion around the neck of his father-in-law and charges it up kinetically, and it blows up and blasts the father onto the ground. And this gives Gambit the opportunity to threaten him with a charged up, well, it's got to be the ace of spades again, yes. He says, "I have no desire to kill my father-in-law." "Kill this honorless mutant thief now," says Marius. And so the assassins get ready to take Gambit out. Just in time, Rogue rescues him, smashing in through the window, and she throws a couple of assassins out from the second story to the ground. Great art on these pages. This is a nice anchor image of Rogue punching through that window. And then look at this. So double page half spread here of Gambit kicking out again. The proportions are much better there. And Rogue flying into action against the assassins. It looks like thumping this guy in the nose. Really nice work here by Lee Weeks, and I like the Klaus Janson inking on Rogue's hair, and also the little details of her flight jacket as well. So she gets blasted by one of the assassins. Of course, she's invulnerable, she'll be all right. And Gambit further attacks the assassins with his kinetically charged cards, and basically between the two of them, they get the upper hand, and Marius is alone with no guard protecting him. This is a great little image here, profile shot, close-up of Gambit with that grin on his face. Really nice, and Rogue here smashing two assassins' heads together. Pretty cool stuff. So Gambit collects his unconscious wife from the bed and says that he's going to look after her. And Marius says, "Now you steal my daughter, thief. If you really want to save Belladonna, then let her taste the precious elixir of the thieves." He's even got a few tears pouring from his eye here, but Bucciolato not picking that up in the colour. And Gambit is given pause. "Elixir?" he asks. "I don't know." And Marius says, "Do not insult me, sir. We assassins have always known about it. Many have wanted it for ourselves, but that is not to be. A pact was made long ago. We get the power, the thieves get the elixir of life." So Gambit's just listening, saying nothing, and Rogue is listening too. "Gambit, what's he talking about?" she asks. And Gambit's response is disingenuous. "Old wives' tales and legends, Rogue, nothing more." "What?" says Marius. "You don't want to tell your mutant girlfriend to hear the truth, Remy?" "Perhaps it's time for all to know the truth." So what is the truth? Well, Marius says, "You know the elixir can save her. Take her to your guild, father. A taste is all it would take. Save my daughter, Remy LeBeau. Save your wife." So he does leave out onto the balcony with Belladonna, and Rogue offers to carry Belladonna. Gambit says, Rogue, you sure? I'm sure. Do right by my daughter, LeBeau. Marius calls after Gambit. And then the pair are watched as they leave by this silhouetted figure in the treetops. Gambit and Rogue's departure is observed from the shadows of the night. And as the saying goes, if looks could kill. For now, the burning rage is directed elsewhere. Separating himself from the shadows, the dark assassin slips inside to face those he once called family, now an outcast among killers, an assassin without honor. He's the enemy. So he takes them all out easily, and then he faces his father. And Marius says, I'm father to you no longer, killer. This is his son, Julian. The day you came into this world is a blight on the memory of your dear mother. Put an end to my suffering. Kill me now, he demands. But Julian isn't going to satisfy his wish. He says, for you, the suffering is just beginning. And he is angry with his father for turning his sister against him. And basically, he says what he's about. Time's come for our guild to be renegotiating the old pacts. The powers and the life can be ours. Having had a taste of both, I want it all. So his father says, you'll fail, but Julian basically slashes him somehow and concludes by saying, the old ways be dead. So we don't see what exactly he's done to his father in this issue. We'll see the father again later on, but we don't see what exactly he's done. Is he slashed his face or what? So then the scene switches to an underground chamber beneath the French Quarter. The tithing ceremony commences. So there's this character, the tithe collector. Here he is, and he showed up in the first issue. And he's the guy who collects taxes from the Thieves Guild and gives them their elixir of life, long life. And the Assassin Guild, he collects tithes from them, taxes from them, and gives them the power. And so the ceremony is interrupted by the arrival of Gambit, demanding to have words with his father, Jean-Luc. And Rogue is asking, what's going on here? Family business, says Gambit. You do not have to be here. She's going to find out about the elixir now. So the tithe collector is unhappy. He says the tithing ceremony is over. Settle your business quickly, thieves, or the remaining elixir returns to Sandra, and the pact is broken. So then he disappears in a puff of smoke, and the thieves are disgusted with Gambit, and one of them, Pierre, moves to strike Gambit with a knife, kill him. But then there's explanations regarding Belladonna. Here she is. And Gambit says he wants the elixir, it can save her. And he also tells Jean-Luc about the death of Henri, which happened in the previous issue. But this guy, Pierre, says, never, you will have nothing, Remy. And Gambit throws him into this, what is it there, like a wardrobe or a table. And Gambit basically threatens his father with his charged cards. I like this shot of the silhouetting over his eyes, and you can see the red eyes there. This is really nicely done. And the spotting of blacks, the light from the cards, and also from the lit cigarette as well. Really nicely done by Lee Weeks. So Rogue talks Gambit down from attacking his own father, and Gambit throws the cards at the wall, picks Belladonna up, says he's going to, if his father won't help him, he'll do it all himself to help Belladonna. And he tells his father, mourn the loss of two sons, Luc LeBeau. We need all 3 vials for the elixir to be complete. Pierre says, Remy cannot be allowed to betray us. I know, says Jean-Luc. So then we have the tithe collector out on the streets after disappearing in that puff of smoke. And he is attacked by a group of assassins under the leadership of Julian, who slashes the tithe collector in the gut and takes the elixir from his bag. And it looks like Pierre has teamed up with the assassins, and the tithe collector survives the attack by Julian and disappears again in a puff of smoke. So Julian says to Pierre, don't worry, thief, you be stealing the part of the elixir your guild has. That's what I paid you for it, because they need 3 elixirs to combine to have the power of granting long life. I got the second right here now. I'll be tracking him back to Paris to get the last. With all 3 vials, the long life can be mine to give to the assassins. We will be having the powers and the long life. And then the scene switches to the Garden District of New Orleans. And here we get something interesting in this issue. So, like, this is the first solo series on Gambit. He has this mysterious past. And we're actually going to learn something about his past and whether Luc LeBeau is his father or not. So he says, I grew up on the streets, don't remember my real parents. That's interesting. Took to stealing to survive, he says. There's some similarity there with Storm's backstory, although of course she remembers her parents, but she grew up on the streets after their deaths in Cairo and, earned her bread by thieving. So Gambit here continues with his little bit of a life story. He says, that's how I met Jean-Luc. Tried to steal his wallet. Didn't know he was the head of the legendary Thieves Guild. He took a shine to me, took me in as one of his own, taught me what I know. Henri was like a brother to me. They be the only family I got, and now... So Rogue is listening to everything, and she says, look, you still got us, Gambit, the X-Men. That I do, Cherie, he says, thanks. Look, I know this is not easy for you, but I have to do this. You don't have to be standing guard on Belladonna. I can find someone. So Rogue, look, she's very understanding here after all the months of flirtation by Gambit towards her, their date in Manhattan in X-Men 24. And she is prepared to help him here and look after his wife while he's out pursuing his business. But she says to him before he goes, what is this place where they're hiding out? He says here, interestingly, I bought it years ago, a place to retire to one day, settle down and raise a family. Pah, who am I kidding? I'll never settle down. But even a thief has to have dreams, eh? Take care, Cherie, as he jumps out from the second story. And she says, you too, you too. And then something goes wrong here. To you and me alone, girl. A bit of dialogue is missing there. And then she talks to the unconscious Belladonna and she says, so tell me, are you the dream of a thief? And this is an excellent shot of Rogue here in silhouette with the shadows of the window, panes and frames cast upon her. Really nicely done by Lee Weeks and Klaus Janson. And then the scene switches, this is the last page, to Paris. Oh, sorry, before that actually, the scene switches to Marius's house. And that's what I said earlier. We don't get a good look at his face and what Julian did to him. He says to Gambit, you return to a wounded man, Remy. And Gambit says, sorry to see that, Marius, but I need your help. I have information that can help me save Belle's life. And Marius responds, it will mean betraying your guild, your family. Gambit, resolved, says here, I can live with that. I can live with it. And then our scene switches to Paris. And these two showed up in the previous issue, Gideon and Sandra. And Gideon says to her, I have to leave you when things go badly with your business. I hate to leave you when things go badly with your business, Sandra, but I have my own affairs to attend. So here's the tithe collector. He made it back to Paris, even though it looks like he's dead maybe. His guts are certainly in bits from what Julian did to him. And she says here, do not concern yourself with me, Gideon. Everything will be resolved as planned. Okay, so to be continued. So nice work in this issue by the art team in particular. And, you know, finally we do get a little bit of information about Gambit's backstory. You know, ever the mystery man in X-Men issues up to this point. So you gotta hand it to the creative team here. They are giving us something regarding Gambit's background. And as I said, great art. So I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Gambit number 2. If you did, please like the video on YouTube. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.